everyone, welcome back to my channel. Well, I am super excited to have our first collaboration on this month's series, Healing Love. It's a series all about diving into what self-love really means and what is behind the take a bubble bath or take time for yourself. Like, what can we actually do to heal our relationship with ourselves? So I have my good friend Ankhara here. She is a Gene Keys guide for entrepreneurs. She is a 20 years experience master teacher and a sacred business coach. So thank you so much for joining me. I'm so excited to dive into all things Gene Keys and how this relates to our relationship with ourselves. So first of all, thank you for being here. I'm so excited to have you.
Yay, I am too. Thanks so much for having me.
Yes.
All these subjects are so juicy to me, so I'm excited to dive in.
Yeah, oh my gosh, me too. So I wanted to start like really basic level because honestly, before I met you, I had no idea what gene keys were. I didn't even really know what human design was. And we can maybe go into, they're pretty related. But in your own words, in your own opinion, what would you say are gene keys for someone that doesn't like have any idea?
Yeah. So it is a complex system. So I'm going to try and shrink it down into like, what are the bare essentials? What do you need to know about it? And the way that I like to describe it is it's a roadmap to your inner knowing, right? It gives you these key gifts and also shadows, right? So it's like this is your natural gift and this is where you get stuck and block your gift in all different areas of your life. So it looks at like what your primary gifts are, the core wounds that you carry, and even insights into your work and prosperity. And it's just like a very well-rounded system where you get to know yourself in a totally different way.
Yeah. I remember when I first started reading about my specific gene keys, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so spot on, like freaky spot on. And so it kind of inspired me to keep reading and keep going and see how it can align with my business projections and my relationships and, all of those things. So I love that definition that you gave.
Yeah.
So what would be the benefits of learning about the gene keys? What does this help you in?
Yeah, like in my experience, right? I came into it, I learned a little bit about human design, which is another system to get to know yourself, and they're really deeply related. And I kind of fell into the gene keys and it's such a big body of work. It scared me and I backed off. And then one day I kind of woke up and I was like ready to dive into it, so I did. And
Mm.
what I found through my own journey is it's allowed me to, yes, see my gifts, yes, see my shadows, but more than that, like accept my true nature. Because when we're not accepting our true nature, we're fighting life.
Mm.
We're fighting life, right? And there's this beautiful, like the way that I imagine it is like when we're fighting parts of ourselves, it's not like we get rid of them. We're just dragging them behind us through our lives, right? But when we're accepting them, it's like, all right, shadow side, all right, part that maybe I'm not crazy about, come lock arms with me. Let's do this together. I believe, I have a deep belief, and it's also part of the gene key system, right? All of our gifts actually emerge from our shadows. So all the
Mm.
parts of ourselves that we aren't accepting, there's gifts in those. So, I mean, when I think about, right, the context of this conversation, being self-love, to me, there's like without self-acceptance, there's no place for that self-love to grow.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's accepting all of it, right? Like I think that's one part that I love about the gene keys and just life journeys in general is learning that we don't have to change these shadows is what it's called in the gene key, but learning that, I mean, it's literally a shadow within us, right? Like the ugly sides or the pieces of us that we try to hide from people. We don't need to change those. There's nothing wrong with us. There's nothing broken in us. But
Yes.
how can we show ourselves love even in that shadow, even in that dark, like deep place that maybe we carry some shame and some guilt. I think that we sometimes live sometimes I think about that we live in this society that's like always telling us things that we need to change, especially about ourselves, but about, in life in general. And this was like something that was so refreshing. It was like literally like spring air. How can you love this part of yourself?
Exactly.
Accept it, like you said.
Exactly. And like the shadow is the part of ourself that comes out when we're afraid. So if
Mm,
you were thinking of it like a child, right? And so much of it is our inner child anyway. But if you
yeah.
think of it as a child's afraid. What do? Do you cast them out? Do you try and bypass them? No, you bring them into your field of love and you embrace them and you let them know that they're safe and they're welcome and that you're there with them. I'm getting emotional about this.
Yes.
But and it's like the in yes, in the self-help industry, right? Even in the spiritual industry, there's so much about like be in your high vibes and don't, like cast out the shadow, clear your negative beliefs. But I think there's a much healthier way,
Yeah.
which is embracing it. It's
Yeah.
like loving the parts of yourself that have never known love before.
Mm, mm,
So
mm.
that's what comes up when I hear you speak about that.
And I remember it was either you or literally Richard Rudd that I was like listening to that said, which is the author, or he wrote the Gene Keys for those of you that don't know.
Richard.
Yeah. I love his voice too, listening to the audio files like
Just
stop.
have a weird crush on him. I don't know. He's so magical.
He is. I think it's his energy that you pick up on. But anyway, it was either you or him that said, like, take time going through these because you're right. It is big. Like, I have this book, and this is all of the gene keys. We don't have every single gene key in our profile. So you don't have to read the entire book.
Mhm.
But it is a lot to digest. And the tip that I really aligned with was take your time going through these. This isn't something that you need to look at your profile and then go through every single number in one day. I think it was you that said, like, take a week with it and just sit, like, just see what comes up with your life's work, right? And just see, like, listen to the audio file or read the chapter in the book, and then just go through your week and just kind of see what comes up for you. And again,
Exactly.
it's like not changing. We don't need to fix something.
Yeah. Yeah, and one of the key features of moving through your gene keys, it's something called the art of contemplation. So
Mhm.
instead of, where you're mentally studying and trying to figure something out, right? It's like this idea of like, well, if this is my map, I need to know all the parts and I need to know all the things about
Yes.
myself. But actually, when you can approach it with a gentleness, with like lots of softness towards yourself, like taking your time, reflecting on it. So you're using your mind, but you're also using like a deeper part of your knowing.
Mhm.
Yeah, it can definitely take time. I know people, I didn't do quite a month for each gene key, but I know people who will spend 1 month for each of their own gene keys.
Wow.
Because there's such richness and depth. And the longer you sit with it in your consciousness or even kind of in the back of your mind, the more you see and you understand about yourself and the world and the world.
Yeah. Oh, good point. Good point. It also makes it a lot more approachable, I think, because I think you and I talked about how like it just seems so unapproachable in the beginning because it's such a big book and it's, kind of complicated. But when you're just like, okay, I'm just going to follow one thing, it
Mhm.
does make it a lot more approachable. So yeah, let's talk about like, let's dive into the world and yourself. Like, how can this info be applied to our daily lives that we learn in these gene keys?
Yeah. So even if we're just thinking about, so every gene key, right? So you have, I think it's 11, should be 11, if
Mhm.
I'm correct. There's 11 gene keys, right? That make up your profile. And each one is a number 1 to 64, and each of those numbers has its own meaning. But what I want to explore here is every gene key you have, which has its own shadow, it has its own gift, and it has its own highest like transcendent essence, right? So the way that I use it in my everyday life is I look at those shadows. I don't spend a lot of time like mulling over them and sitting in that energy, but I look for them because they reveal my patterns. Like they tell me, this is what happens when you're afraid. I learned and I believe there's really only two emotions. There's fear and there's love. So if I'm in
Yes.
fear, like I don't have to get to the love. We acknowledge the fear, right? But then we crack it open. And so we can go deeper and bring ourselves closer to ourselves.
Mm.
So for me, it's like being able to recognize those fear patterns makes it easier for me to not be enmeshed with the fear. Like there's some
Mm.
separation, right? It's like,
Yeah.
okay, like one of my primary gift, the shadow, is intellect, right? We don't always think of intellect as being something that's negative,
Yeah.
right? But here it's like when I go into fear, my brain gets super active and I kind of over intellectualize, and it cuts me off from my heart, and also actually cuts me off from clarity. It's like too many thoughts at once, right? So I can notice when I start the mind spinning, I'm like, oh, I know what that pattern is. Well, what's the gift there? The gift is precision. So if I come into my heart and I ask from my heart, what is it that I need to see and understand clearly? Boom, then I get it. So I'm actually using my awareness of the shadow pattern to bring me into my gift, right?
Mm.
And so we can do that. There's a sphere that's all about your health. You can look at like, oh, well, when I'm trying to think of an example, like when I'm in conflict, I cut
Mhm.
myself off from my health, right?
Yeah.
Oh, here I'm in conflict and my health matters to me. What's the gift here, right? And you can kind of
Yeah.
do it with all of those.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love that. And I think this kind of like pulls into your whole idea that we were chatting about earlier about micro practicing. Can you explain what that is?
Oh my gosh. I don't know why this is not a thing. And maybe now that I'm saying it, someone else is going to steal it and make it a thing, but it's a thing
No,
for me, okay?
make it a
Because
thing.
I like really was the most structure averse human that I knew. I'm a very creative person. I've been a musician for many years, and like I just didn't like structure. And I would study with all of, my mentors, my spiritual mentors for many years, 20 years, over 20 years. And they all had this daily practice that was like very extensive,
Yeah.
yoga and meditation and channeling and this, and every day they did it. Now I'm a mom, so I definitely I don't have the time for that personally. Some moms can maybe fit it in, but I can't get up at 4 in the morning. um, but so I just thought that daily practice was something that I couldn't do
Mm.
because I put it in this like tight box. And it's the same thing with like mindfulness and meditation. A lot of people feel like it has to look a certain way. And since I can't do it that way, I can't do it. So what I did for myself is I was just like, there's got to be a way. And I started doing something called micro practicing. So I literally created like 50 little practices that were between like 30 seconds and 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And I started doing them like a little bit. Here's my cat. We were talking about this. A little bit in the morning. If I know that I'm going to be stressed out later, I would bring a micro practice in, like right before I had to do something I was nervous about, and just started to weave the practices into my day. Right. So even like if we were going to, I'll give an example, right? Like we can even do one very briefly. Like if you put your hand on your heart and close your eyes for a moment, and we're just going to take 3 breaths into the heart and allow ourselves to settle. So take a nice slow breath in through the nose into the heart, and exhale all your tension and put all your weight down in your chair. And if you really let yourself do this, I bet you already feel the shift. Take another breath in and exhale any tension, any running thoughts from your mind. One more final breath in. And as you exhale, just say the sacred words to yourself in your own heart voice. I am here. And then just let yourself be here. And then you can open your eyes, right? So it's practices like that that are so simple. And so what it's this is my own way of learning, right? The way that I learn is I like to integrate a lot into my life. So as I'm going through the gene keys,
Mhm.
right? Like I will kind of in the moment, spur of the moment, but I'll create micro practices around like
Mm.
I have one of my primary gifts, or one of my gifts in my pearl sequence is delight. and it actually shows up twice, is delight. And the shadow is seriousness. So when
Mm,
I'm serious, I cut myself off from delight. So I will take a pause and I'll ask myself, it's like, okay, like, what does delight feel like in my body? And I tap into that for 30 seconds and then I move on with my day. So it's, and I'm telling you all this because you can do it too, right? So if the desire is to feel more love towards yourself,
mm,
right? It can be something as simple as like, nervous system, like 101, right? Hand on your heart, hand on your cheek, and just say to yourself, I love you.
mm,
And then just let yourself feel like receive that love from yourself.
mm. Wow.
And it can be that simple. It doesn't have to be like a long practice. And
Mm,
if you are, sorry, I'm going on and on, but like if you can seed this into your everyday, right? Like your little moments throughout the day. When you wake up, do something like, oh, I'm so grateful for you. And you're saying that to yourself, right? I'm so
mm,
grateful. And then, you're making breakfast and you just take a deep breath and you're like, I love being alive. Just these
mm.
tiny little things, and they start to compound. And that's the idea, is like compounding little actions make lasting transformation, as opposed to I'm going to do a whole overhaul with my life and shake everything up and do this whole boot camp thing, right? Which is wonderful to kind of give you like a jump start, but it's hard to sustain.
Yeah.
That's me. I will walk off my soapbox right now, but I do, you can tell I believe very strongly about this. I
That
really
was
think we all need it.
Yeah, no, that was beautiful. That was like very profound. I didn't name mine, right? But and oh my gosh, I loved how you went in with that. But our personalities are almost like the opposite because I'm a very structured person and I'm very I like repetition. In the past, I have
Mhm.
been very structured, I'll say, because I've worked on this. And I would create this morning routine
Mhm.
that you wake up, you do this, you do this, you do this, you do this, and then you go about your day. And what I realized was I was doing these things out of habit, out of habitual pattern, versus asking myself, is this serving me today? Is this what I need today? And so for me, what I do, that ironically we're going to be talking about in my masterclass that I'm teaching tomorrow, which by the time this video is posted, you could email me or DM me for the replay link, is what I can do. But I'm going to be talking about how can we tune in to ourselves, like you're saying, in the morning, for example, and just show ourselves some love and then ask ourselves, what do you need? What do you need today? Because what you need today is going to be different from what you needed yesterday or what you might need tomorrow. And I love the idea of micro practicing. I might like take that on and I will give you credit every time I will, because I think this needs to catch on. I'm like completely on board because we get stuck in this. I can't do a morning routine because I don't want to, or I don't have the energy to wake up 30 minutes early. Ugh, that's gorgeous. Thank you for sharing that.
You're so welcome. I'm feeling called to share this. Like I actually started doing this when my kids were little and they were having tantrums all the time. So my micro practice was like, can I be at peace in the middle of a tantrum? And it was like literally just like an experiment for me. And I was just like, wait a second, this is working. So that's how it
Wow.
started. Um,
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
Some mom is listening to this and that literally
I
just
do it.
expanded her mind. Oh, thank you. Oh my
You're
gosh.
so welcome. This is so much fun.
Yes. Do you have anything else that you want to share or say that you feel like you want to, or
Mm.
you're feeling called to share?
Well, I'm just called to reiterate this idea of self-acceptance as an opening to love,
Yeah.
right? Like we can't, it's very, very hard to really show unconditional love if you can't accept things and yourself the way you are. And it's like that, to me, self-acceptance, it's like you're bringing the truth into the present moment when you're accepting things the way that they are. We don't accept it, we're like pushing it aside. I accept myself exactly as I am.
Mm.
and I'm willing to love myself just as I am in this moment. Like a simple prayer like that can do so much at opening the heart. And so that's my wish for like really like my deep wish for everyone is to just know that you're okay just as you are, and you're lovable. And yeah, that's
Yeah.
my that's my heart wish for everyone.
Thank you.
So
Oh my
welcome.
gosh. Oh, that was beautiful. All right. Um, so thank you so much for sharing. That was really profound. I feel your heart coming through. So I want to
Mm.
just thank you from the bottom of my heart for taking your time and your energy. If someone is interested in learning a little bit more about Gene Keys, interested in connecting with you, where can people find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram or Facebook under Ankhara Rose, ANKHARAROSE. Just reach out to me, DM, friend me, do all the fun stuff.
Yes, all the fun stuff. Thank you so much. This has been an absolute pleasure.
Me too. Thank you.